Okay, welcome to our series For the Love of Star Wars, where we bring in a friend from the YouTube community to talk about a particular piece of Star Wars media they absolutely love. It could be one of the films, an episode of a TV show, or even a documentary. And this week, our guest is none other than Shabby Geek.
Hey, fellas.
Thanks for
Martin.
joining
Shabby.
us again,
How's it
Shabby.
going?
You all right?
Yeah, long time no see. I might as well move in.
Yes. Yeah. Now, Shabby, you sounded very excited to join us for this. As without going into too much detail, you're a little bit underwhelmed by some of the recent Star Wars. So, what beloved Star Wars film, episode, or media have you chosen to talk about with us this week?
I'm going to talk tonight about. It's funny this because you are right. You know, for the past few weeks, months, and years, we have been talking about how bad Star Wars is getting now, and I think because recently there's been a few that have come out that haven't flipped our switches, if you will. We seem to forget that there has been some awesome Star Wars that's come out. So, and one of the things for me, I think he's my favorite of, besides Andor, besides Rogue One, was Chapter 13 of Season 2, Episode 5 of The Mandalorian, which is The Jedi. I don't know what to say about this. I must have seen this episode thousands of times. It's just superb. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Well, written and directed by none other than Dave Filoni. I don't think he's done much else, to be honest, but it has an IMDb rating of 9.3 out of 10. So yes, a very positive.
Was this his first live action? Was this his first live action? I think it was. I think this was his first directorial debut live action, wasn't it, as well?
I think you're right. Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it. The funniest thing is when we all got the rumor that they're going to bring Ahsoka to live action, and I don't know about you two, but I was one of the fans that said Rosario Dawson. She'd be perfect. The big eyes, the big lips, the way her face. She just looks like Ahsoka. And I'm glad they didn't go down the Ashley Eckstein route. I'd have no problem with Ashley Eckstein playing it, but I think she's a lot older and a lot wiser now, Ahsoka. So I think she was just perfect casting. I mean, she really was. Yeah. So I was looking forward to this episode. And if you remember as well, the episode before, it was Bo-Katan that said to him, go to Corvus, you'll meet a Jedi and that kind of thing. So it was, I think by then, I can't really remember, but I think by then we all knew it was going to be Ahsoka that he'd be meeting. So you sat there, and I remember at the time in America, it used to be 3:00 in the morning. So I was one of them. I'd stay up till 3:00 in the morning to watch it, simply because, you'd have ZSR to talk about it, and you don't want to get it ruined and that kind of thing. And the other thing is, I like watching it on my own. I know it sounds daft that. I know, I like going to the cinema with my kids and my nieces and nephews, but the TV shows, I like to sit there and actually watch it. So it's perfect for me. 3:00 in the morning, everyone's asleep. Dogs are, not kicking off and so forth. Yeah. And I just love the way it started because, I don't know whether you two do it. You sit there 10 minutes before either a film or a TV show and you say to yourself, I wonder how they're going to introduce her. Is it going to be one of those things where it gradually at the end she'll come in and so forth? But this didn't. Boom, she was straight on. And it goes in that wood, and the way you just saw the lightsabers, and then it blew me away from the very, very start. It really did.
What a great introduction to bring her in. What is it about this episode in particular then that you really love?
I always look for me. I'm a big book reader. I've got a big library of Star Wars. I like James Luceno. I like Paul S. Kemp. I like Timothy's. And one of the reasons why some novelists stand out to me is because reading a book, you get the feel of Star Wars. And it's hard to explain a feel of Star Wars, but it's like an aura around it. If you're watching something and you have that feeling, it doesn't necessarily have to be original trilogy or prequel. It's hard to explain, just like a feel of Star Wars. This had it in abundance. I mean, and the funniest thing is, if you watch, it had that like a green tint across the actual, across the actual episode. It wasn't bright, it wasn't colourful. Yeah. The music sounded, it was more like out of Blade Runner than it did of Star Wars. But just the way the story was told and the scenery, and I can't work it out what it was. I remember watching it, and just afterwards I thought, that's absolutely fantastic. And I've always been one for progression. I've always said I don't mind things changing. I don't mind as long as you keep the feeling of Star Wars. Because if you watch this episode, it doesn't feel like the original trilogy at all. And the Ahsoka that we get isn't even the Ahsokas from Rebels or the Clone Wars. She's a lot older. Like I said, she's a lot wiser, and it was smothered in Star Wars to me. I just couldn't believe it, and it was one of those rarities, especially in modern day Star Wars, where I had to watch it again straight away. And it's again one of those, if I'm bored or if I'll put the Last Jedi, this episode of the Jedi on. I just think it's, I said the Last Jedi. Yeah, nearly gave it away then. Then I love that movie so much, But what is it? It's just this, and it's the things he had. I mean, you saw Morgan Elsbeth, the magistrate at the time, and she was played brilliantly. What is it? Diana Lee Intersanto played her. Michael Biehn turning up as Lang. This, and just the way they had that village behind her, our little city behind that wall, and you had everything in it. You know what? I don't know whether you two think the same way, but a Star Wars has got a lot of Japanese samurai and Western vibes into it. Our episode had it all. You could see the Western version, especially with the duel at the end, and you could see that obviously the samurai feel to it when she's fighting Morgan. I don't know. It's just superb, and it's just little things. There was one part of it which I would have loved to have the poster for. Is when Ahsoka's carrying Grogu, because we find out he's called Grogu in this episode, and the way they do that too is perfect. They don't make this big deal. She's talking to the Mandalorian and says, "Oh, Grogu thinks this," and he's like, and it's funny as well because you always think that about Darth Vader. Darth Vader's got a helmet on, and the Mandalorian has, but you can see so much emotion through that helmet in this episode.
Yeah.
And there's a part where she's holding Grogu, and there's the moon behind her, and it's when they're at that campsite. And honestly, I must have paused that 3 or 4 times just to see that actual scene, that actual picture. It's just so well made. It's absolutely beautiful. It really is.
Yeah. No, I have to agree. I've made notes whilst I was watching the episode, and what I really enjoy about it is the mix of the old samurai and Western style movies, and how it's a bit of a twist from the norm of Star Wars, but it doesn't feel out of place. Does that make sense?
100% it makes sense, and this is what we were looking for. And I think that's why some of us we get a bit frustrated and a bit upset, and our passion runs our mouths basically, because we do get angry and we do get. But you can see by episodes like this what they can make. You can see by episodes like this how they, if you get a great story with great actors and put it together properly, this is the sort of Star Wars Disney should be making. Not necessarily the dark tone, but something that you come away with thinking, yeah, that was awesome. That was fantastic. I mean, it's the little lines that they pulled in when she's fighting the magistrate, and she says, "Where is Admiral Thrawn? Name me one of us that wasn't blown away by that." We're like, what?
Yeah.
This is the first time. And I never knew that. I mean, we'd seen Thrawn in Rebels, obviously, but I never knew she was going to come out with a. And that's the thing. Instead of this big thing first, build up, then do it. This is the sort of thing that Star Wars does, the same way as Vader turned around to Luke and said, "I am your father." Just one line that makes you go, "No way, that's awesome how they did that."
Yeah.
It's just things like that. The Beskar spear, and she gives him that, and you find out more about Beskar and how she's got it and so forth. And I just think the fight scenes, one of the big things for me as well is the CGI in this. The droids in this look ridiculous. I mean, it's just unbelievable how well they do it. And it's in a way, it's like 2 or 3 stories in one. You'll get the story of Ahsoka. You get the story of obviously the Mandalorian. You get the story of them, and then you get even the story of the villagers there, what they've had to go through, and what she puts them through just to survive. It's just one of the. It's just perfect to me. It's funny because again, it's one of those episodes as well where you can sit there and say, "Well, what didn't you like about it?" And this is such a rarity for me. There's nothing I did not like about this episode. Everything I think is just superb, And again, I think it goes down to Star Wars lore. It doesn't matter how many times you see your favorite type of Star Wars. It never gets old, never gets boring. This is one of them for me. I think it's unbelievable.
Martin, same question to you. What do you?
Well, I'm just going to leave because Shabby, you don't need me at all. Shabby's here. Yeah, Shabby's covered everything. But I mean, no, Shabby's 100% right. This is an absolute quality episode. And I could go through scene by scene and give you something amazing that happens in every scene. But there was two. I rewatched this again before we came on to do this, and there was a couple of things I kind of picked out as I was watching it for a 15th time or something. And there's two things in this that I think that we got really well from the first two scenes of The Mandalorian. The first is there's a real mysticism to this episode, something that's been lacking in Star Wars for a while. And when she's talking to Grogu through the Force and she's explaining to the Mandalorian about the Force, I mean, she even repeats the line, it's an energy field surrounded by all living things. You know, we've heard that line before, but it just felt perfectly right. And we were talking about the Force. We've seen we've seen someone who quintessentially is a Jedi, even though she denies it, talking to another person who grew up in the prequel era at the Jedi Temple. There's all these sort of moments of lore that are happening on screen, and I'm losing my mind because thing I love most about Star Wars is lore and the mysticism of the Force. They're the two things that I would pick out as my favorite parts of Star Wars, and this episode had it in abundance. And the other thing that this episode does really well, and I think Shabby alluded to this when he was speaking about it, is every scene, every character was so well portrayed, written, filmed, whatever you want to say, that you wanted to know more about that character. You didn't, when the episode ended, when that episode ended, I wanted to know about Michael Biehn, where he came from, what was his past. I wanted to know more about Morgan Elsbeth, and essentially we see her again in the future, and we see her in Tales of the Empire, I think it was, in the past. So we got to see that. That was great. I wanted to find out what's Ahsoka been doing for the last 10 years of her life, and there was just so much in this. I wanted to find out about the town folk, there was just so much. I even wanted to find out about those huge beasts in the background that were munching on the dead trees. I saw those in the distance, and I know they were sort of silhouettes, but they looked incredible, and I wanted to know more about them. This episode is an absolute banger of a Star Wars episode, and I'm so glad Shabby chose it, because it's another one where I could talk all night about, because it blew me away.
That's all too Star Wars, though, Martin. What you're saying before, because the reason why they make the Book of Boba Fett, the reason why background characters to us are so important is because how well they've come across on screen. You want to know more about them. So that was a great point you made, because Michael Bihn's character Lang, you could watch a whole series on him and how he got obviously to the magistrate and the townspeople, and Morgan Elsbeth herself. You found out she was a member of the Night Sisters, and you got to see a little bit more of her, which it was a shame with the way they killed her off in Ahsoka. I would have kept her going. I think she's a great character. But you are right, when people like Morgan Elsbeth turned up, and then her episode of the Tales of the Jedi is a brilliant episode. It's things like that. You're exactly right, that you build upon that because of how well they were written in this. And it's so I couldn't agree more. The other thing as well, going back to what you were saying, the way it ties it all in. You were talking before about Ahsoka, and she was kind of training Grogu and so forth, but then she turned him down. And the tie-in is superb. Her actual quote is, "I've seen what such feelings can do to a fully trained Jedi." And then automatically diehards like us, or people who know the law, we know exactly what she means. And that's the nicest thing about the way this was written. You don't have to go, why, what's happened? Well, I used to be trained by a Jedi. We know just by one sentence. I think a one sentence quote means more to you than going on about it and filling it all in. And it was just superb. And so, we were all a bit aghast when, you're not going to train Grogu. But when she explains why, you think this is so cool. They've brought old school Star Wars into a modern audience, if you will. And then I think the people who don't watch the original stuff, they're going to turn around and go, well, what does she mean by that? And then it gives fans an opportunity to go, oh, well, let me show you. And stick on the movie. That's what it's all about for me, is the build up and I think that's one of the things that frustrates Star Wars fans now, because this is only a couple of years old. You can see what they can do. You can see how well it was written. And I think this was before, the time of everything else comes before a story, and it shouldn't do, really. I liked Ahsoka in Ahsoka. The only I didn't like the finale of that, but I like the way she's portrayed. I like the fact that she's not this, happy-go-lucky, funny, quick quips like she was in the Clone Wars. She's a lot older. She's been through a lot more.
Yeah.
And so the way, she's portrayed is superb.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, Ahsoka, if we talk about her for a second, I think when the Clone Wars first started, I wasn't a big fan. But over the years of watching it, Ahsoka had very quickly become probably in my top 5 favorite Star Wars characters of all time. I thought as she got to about season 4, she became an amazing character, and that arc she had at the end of the Clone Wars where she left the Jedi, I thought that was totally unexpected. And through that, and my Ashley Eckstein became Ahsoka to me, and I'm just the same as you, Shabby. I thought Rosario Dawson would be a great choice, but I was still a little bit unsure. But as soon as she came on the screen and she fought those guys in the beginning in the forest, and deignited her lightsabers and then disappeared into the mist and then reappeared, slashed those 2 trees down and then force pushed that tree log. I was like, Ashley Eckstein, who? No, I say that in a comical way because obviously I love Ashley Eckstein.
I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I mean, it's funny because you see her stood and she's got that cape and she's stood above the wall and she points the lightsaber. It's just like she's come straight off the animation. Even the way she stands is I mean, I just thought it was such perfect casting, and and obviously, I know she got a lot of flack for the arms folding and the boringness of the actual TV show Ahsoka, but I can't blame her for that. All you can do is blame the directing and the writing for that. But in this episode, I could not think of anyone who could play it. Even Ashley Eckstein, she's great in the cartoons, and she brought Ahsoka to life in animation, but Rosario Dawson 100% brought it to real life, brought it to life in the live action stuff. I just think she was superb.
She really did nail the role. I was going to say about a favourite scene, character or dialogue from this episode for you, but whilst we're on the subject, whilst Martin's just said about it, the opening scene for me, where she is taking out the guards in the smoke, and I've actually got it written in my notes about her killing the one guy through the tree and then using the force to throw the rest of that piece of tree and take out the next guy was just like perfect. Yes, it's absolutely.
I think it's one of those rarities as well, especially in modern day Star Wars, that a lightsaber is actually a powerful weapon. It'll actually, it's used for what it is in this. You're a bit like intimidated by a lightsaber in this episode for exactly what you've just said.
Yeah. Was there a particular scene or character or dialogue? I mean,
the dialogue for me at the end with Morgan Elsbeth and Ahsoka, the final showdown, if you will, the way she stands, the way she moves her feet, the way they get into position, and it's done exactly like an old samurai Western duel kind of fight. And it's great because she's not intimidated by her at all, Morgan Elsbeth. She's not, it's a Jedi and all that. I mean, I know she hires, the story is she hires the Mandalorian together and so forth, but when she does turn up, she doesn't back down. It's not as if she's surrounded by all the robots. It's not as if she's got a wall. She lets her in. She pulls out that Beskar spear, which I thought was so cool. And obviously, this lady's a relative of Bruce Lee, and she's done martial arts all her life, and so you got people who actually looked the part. They didn't look like choreography 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. They actually, and it's just the way she took out the short lightsaber that goes into the water, but she gave her a fight, if you will. It wasn't just a one-sided one. But when she gets to her, and as I said before, without repeating myself, she says, "Where is Admiral Thrawn?" I was blown away. This is a character I've loved since the night through Timothy Zahn's books. I liked him in Rebels, but he wasn't the Thrawn from the Rebels. Do you see what I mean? It was like which I understand. Rebels is for a whole family audience. It is a bit different, but it's just the way she said it, and that's the first time I've ever heard him mentioned in live action. And it honestly, I was like a 14-year-old girl. I was like, what?
Not to get, without getting too far off subject, what did you make of Thrawn in live action in the Ahsoka series?
No, I didn't mind it. And the thing about it, Thrawn, sometimes you say you can't make a book into a movie, or you can't take character. They said it with The Watchmen, and they've done it with a few things. He's one of those characters for me You know, in the books, he's not a villain. He's he's the same as, to me, my second favorite character of all time is Tarkin. Over that same reason, he doesn't believe, he's not a villainous kind of, mustache twirling, I'm going to conquer the universe. He's doing his job.
Yeah.
He's doing his job very, very well. Thrawn is the
Yeah.
king of this through the Chiss Ascendancy, and you read the books and it's all very tactical how he sets his approach out, and he knows, he gets on people's nerves, and he knows some people don't like it and so on, but he's doing his job to perfection. In Ahsoka, it was weird because you've had so many books, and Timothy Zahn revitalized Thrawn by bringing him out again, and I've read those books too. But it's always the same type of character. When you see him in Ahsoka, there's so many things. Right, we'll do this and it doesn't work. Right, we're going to do that and it doesn't work. Right, she's her and I think it's Ezra on the back of that horse kind of thing, and nothing's hitting her. Well, I'm sat there as a Thrawn fan. That would never happen. He's not going to. He's not going to be like. And he depended too much on the Night Sisters and the way they did it. He's not that character, if you will. So you never know. I'm a person. Obviously you're going to have to do something with him, but when you've read so much about him and he never fails, and the reason he's, remember, this is an alien in the Empire. This never happens. It's because of how good he is. In this, he was portrayed a bit dumb, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree, Shabby. I think as well. I think in season 2, when he's back in the our Star Wars galaxy, if you like, and he's now got control of the entire remnants of the Empire to command. So he's got some Star Destroyers, hundreds of thousands of stormtroopers, etc., etc. If he continues to act the way he did in Ahsoka in season 2, with all of that behind him, then you'd question it, I think, a bit more, because he's back in his element, sort of thing. So fingers crossed they will hopefully right a few wrongs from, because I agree, I think that finale of the Ahsoka kind of was a bit head scratching, wasn't it? It was
just a bit, and it's the same as Morgan Elsbeth. Though, when I found out she was going to be in Ahsoka, I thought, this will be awesome, because I really liked her in the episode we're talking about tonight, and she just came across as a bit of a Disney villain, if you will, mustache twirling, and it wasn't. To me, it wasn't the same character as we saw in this episode, and the way they killed her off too. She pulls out the sword, and there's no build up to that sword, so we know obviously it's the Night Sisters thing, blah blah blah. But there's a lot of people that turn around and say, "Well, what's that?" And they didn't give her a character too much time to develop. If you were going to kill her off, I would have killed her off in season 2 or let her build, because I think, especially in this day and age, I think a female character like that would have been brilliant. I would really be interested in watching her. I think she was better in, like I said, in the episode of Tales of the Jedi than she was in Ahsoka. That's what we wanted to see, her background and who she was and how she became who she was. I think she's a standout in this episode. I think, she's perfect.
Martin, I didn't get your scene of choice. Well, if there was one.
I'll give you a jokey one first. The scene where the Mandalorians sort of facing off with Lang, and they're going to do the quick draw. That scene would have been my favourite scene in the episode if the Mandalorian had said, "I'm your Huckleberry." Tombstone there. But my favourite, in seriousness, my favourite scene, and it's quite a long scene, I suppose, is the scene where the Mandalorian's wandering through the forest looking for Ahsoka, and they have that little fight, and he's using everything Mandalorian, and she's using all the Jedi stuff. And I thought there's a lovely moment where he fires the rope round her, and she just looks up at him and smiles, and then just jumps over the tree branch and pulls him up, and then just slashes the lightsaber from behind to get rid of the rope. Then obviously that leading to her that moment where she says, "I hope you're here to talk about him," when she points at Grogu, to the scene that Shabby reference, where they're both talking to each other through the Force, and there's that huge moon in the background. And then obviously the mention of Yoda and the rest of that whole part of the episode, for me, I suppose it's the middle of the episode, was just, I could have watched that episode, that scene over and over and over again. I just thought brilliantly acted, brilliantly written, total Star Wars as far as I was concerned.
100%.
The sort of thing that I'll lap up massively. So yeah, that would probably be my favorite 8 scenes.
Yeah,
it was just funny because it's like she's, when he asks her, "You're going to train her," and we went on to this before, but it's just that sort of thing that we want as fans. You know, the last time we'd seen Ahsoka, obviously she'd walked out the Jedi, and then you see her turn up in Clone Wars, but she hasn't changed her stance in that way. She saw what happened. No. You know, and she sees what attachment can do to them. And then when she sees, obviously, how much Grogu is attached to the Mandalorian. The last thing she's going to do, but again, you know, she could have easily turned out, well, I'll train him, but this what could happen, but she didn't. She made it known, I ain't touching this because of what's happened, you know, in the past. And I thought that was beautiful. I thought that was so well done, you know, to bring things from Star Wars lore into this. And, you know, because there's been a few things that's happened, especially, you know, in recent Star Wars, that canon doesn't mean much. You know, they'll do what they want, they'll say what they want, and, you know, us lot will get pissed off by it, but they'll carry on, you know, and we just feel a bit silly because we're getting miffed over nothing here. You know, I know it's only canon, it's not, but the way they did this, I just thought was beautiful. You know, that she kept the character of Ahsoka, which was perfect, you know. And even the way, like I said, again, without repeating myself, the way she was older and wiser, you could see her being like that. Because as the Clone Wars went, you could see her getting a lot more older, a lot more mature, and then the things that's happened to her, like leaving the Jedi and that kind of thing, it's probably hit her and it's probably changed her a little bit. So when you saw her in this with that sort of persona, I just thought, man, that's so well written, you know. And I knew Filoni do it. Filoni's character, it's his baby, and he loves this character.
Yeah,
but it's easy to take a character you actually love and make her Rey, if you will, and he didn't. He held her back, and it's just, you know. So this is the Ahsoka we got, which I loved it.
Worked.
Just quickly, how good was that scene in the Book of Boba Fett where Ahsoka and Luke were chatting, and she just turns to Luke and says, "Oh, so much like your father." You know, that was one of those moments. I know we're not talking about that episode, but I was like, not gonna cry. It was so good.
Well, Luke Skywalker means the world to me. I mean, it's funny because we do the live streams, as you know, and all the lads know I'm a diehard Luke fan. I absolutely love Luke Skywalker, and I'm not going to get in, this is a positive show, so I'm not going to get into anything. But a lot of people might have assumed that with me, you know, the part where he turns up in The Mandalorian is my favorite. It's my favorite scene, but my favorite episode is this one. And but I mean, you are right. I didn't really want to talk about other TV episodes just in case you have a guest on that talks about that. But when you see her in the Book of Boba Fett, it's perfect, you know, because you now know who the live action Ahsoka is, and you know, and it's little touches like that when she says, "Oh, just so much like your dad," and wow, man, you see Luke and Ahsoka in the same scene. It's like, what, you know.
Finally, then, I suppose you probably have covered this throughout the episode, but what is it about this episode that feels like Star Wars to you?
It's like I said at the very, very start. It's hard that it's like I said about reading a book or listening to a piece of music. Princess Leia's theme for me always is Star Wars to me. I love Leia's da, 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 and that's the one that makes me go, oh man, you know. And it doesn't. I've heard it 10,000 times, but you can't put your finger on what it actually is. You know, it's like I say, just some stuff just sits and fits in the franchise that we love, and this is one of those episodes. And it's like I said, if you actually watch it, it's nothing like the original trilogy. But after watching an episode like this, and it's like the lore of Star Wars is there. I'm like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I mean by progression. This is what I mean, where you can take characters that we know, little things here and there, like the Jedi, like the Force, like training, like this, and stick them into a new concept, and it works. That feels like Star Wars, you know?
Absolutely. I think progression, like you say, progression is the right word for it, because it is something completely different, but it is something that absolutely works. You know, they're bringing us into a new planet, and it's not really like many of the planets that we've seen in Star Wars before, I don't think, but you've still got those elements, and it does tie in a strange way. It all does feel like Star Wars, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
maybe it's the characters and the creatures and the aliens. I don't know.
It's funny, you watch some people and they'll turn around and say, I want something completely different. I want new characters. I want new I want this. And I understand that, but you can't not serve people that love this franchise. There's got to be. It's like you said before about the way she said about the Force and it binds us and so forth, the way it back. I love stuff like that over the simple reason that's what we're all here for. You know, I mean, and I think that's what Star Wars does sometimes nowadays. Is that I understand they try something and it doesn't work, but this is something that they tried that does work. That it is a little bit different. That, you know, you are getting new characters, but they fit into our universe perfect. And I think it's a rarity nowadays. You know, it's sometimes Star Wars to me feels a little bit rushed or a little bit not written. But this was written perfect. This was, I mean, they could have made a movie out of this one episode, extended it, and done something, you know, with it. So it can be done.
Yeah.
So you know, that's what it meant.
Getting the right people.
Getting
the right people in the right place.
It's all about talent. It's all about people that can do it, isn't it? That's what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and in this case, I think Dave Filoni is probably the perfect person for it, isn't he? But
I think
Martin,
for this episode,
yeah. Well, same to you then.
Well, I think it's telling that of all the times that George Lucas has ever visited a set when they've been making Star Wars since he sold the company, I think this is one of the only times he's gone to a set while they filmed an episode, and he got to see Grogu, and you've seen pictures of him with Rosario Dawson, you know, standing next to him, Dave Filoni and Rosario Dawson standing in the picture together. The two guys that created her character, seeing it on live action, I think that must have been quite a moment for both of them. You know, and as a fan, it was quite a moment for me to see that. So I think, you know, I don't want to repeat what everyone else has said, but I'll try my best. But it's the familiar in something new, to paraphrase what Shabby said. And I think it comes down again to, it's something we've never seen in Star Wars before. And I know the original trilogy, especially A New Hope, was, you know, there was certainly Western / samurai aspects to it, but this takes it to a newer level. But I think the fact that, you know, we've seen it before in A New Hope, you don't question it. I think it just looks natural in Star Wars. So I think subconsciously you perhaps think Star Wars when you see those sort of things. You know, the Jedi's outfits are based on samurai dressing gowns, if you like. Darth Vader's helmet is based on a samurai mask. You know, there's subtle elements in Star Wars.
Boba Fett walking, you hear the spurs from a Western movie. You know, it's things like that. You know,
exactly. Yeah, the cantina is a bar in an old West town. You know, there's lots of those elements there, but it's not in your face. And I think this did a really good job of it. While it was a bit more in your face, it wasn't overt. And again, it comes to, if you're going to do something new in Star Wars, keep some of the old stuff in there so that it still, you know, retains the knowledge of older things that have come before and after, but also hire people that can write, can direct, can cinematography in this episode. You know, everything was absolutely nailed on. So the fact that we got this new style of Star Wars didn't matter, because everything else worked in tangent together to make a fantastic episode. So we got something fresh, but we got something old, and I think that's the biggest compliment I can give this episode, to be quite honest.
There's nothing you just said that I don't agree with. Even if you go back to the very, very beginning, you watch A New Hope and then you watch Empire Strikes Back. They are two completely different movies. The tone is different. The shift is different. The characters are a bit more wiser and I think this is why this episode resonated, exactly what I said before about Ahsoka. You can tell she's not the Ahsoka from the Clone Wars. She's older. She's this, that, and so forth. Yeah. So, and this is what I mean. You know, a lot of people, when Empire Strikes Back came out, you read all the reports and stuff. A lot of people didn't like it. This isn't Star Wars. This isn't this. This isn't that. But after a while, you watched it and realized, for exactly what you've just said about this episode, there's some things, elements in there that stick and they work, you know, and that's what I mean. You know, I've always been one of those people. I don't mind something different as long as you get that feel, as long as, you know, we're all, and it's the same way. We all play football, but there's a reason we're not professionals. You talented people are the professionals, and I think what you've said is and what we're more or less saying is, you're exactly right. You put the right people in, the way Tony Gilroy did Andor. You know, he was just perfect to do that, and I think that's what it is going forward for me. If you put the right people in, if you pay the right people and get the right talent in, we're going to get more things like the Jedi and
yeah.
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, I think it's time to wrap up, unless anyone's got any final thoughts. Shabby?
I'm just going to say I'm glad to do this. I'm glad I said it before we started recording. I'm glad you've set this up, because there's a lot of time now, and especially people like myself, where you've had to sit back and go, I can't keep arguing about or falling out with a franchise that I have loved. I'm never going to turn my back to it. I'm never going to unsubscribe. I'm never going to say Star Wars is. I love this franchise, and I think sometimes we forget, because in a way we're so focused on what's come out now, we forget what has come out, and it's things like this episode, or like the Mandalorian season 1 and 2, and Andor, and this and that keeps our love going up. So I've always said, for everything we don't like, there's also half the side that we do like. So I'm glad that you two have done this. It's refreshing to talk positive about Star Wars. It is. So
definitely, absolutely. Yeah. Martin, anything from you?
No. It's not, as Shabby said, it's nice to talk positive because it keeps your blood pressure down. So
I'm too old for this now.
Well, okay, then that will be it for today. Thank you, Shabby, so much for coming on and talking about and sharing with us your passion for the Jedi. My only final thoughts: I still prefer the Razor Crest to the N1 Starfighter. But that might just be me. I don't know. Thanks to everyone for watching. Drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, let us know in the comments what you liked most about this episode. And we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you so much.